What it do, YouTube? It's your boy Amb, aka Ambitious. For those who are new to my channel, welcome back. For those who have been on my channel, I apologize for the hiatus. I just finished my third year of medical school last week. 2 weeks ago, took step 2 last week. Started my 4th year this week, and it's just been a crazy journey. If you watch my end of the first semester of 3rd year, my recap video, I kind of told y'all that the second semester of my 3rd year was just gonna be kind of crazy, and I just really had to handle business. But I'm back. You know what I'm saying? I really want to bless y'all with these keys, bless y'all with my experiences, and share with y'all the things that I've learned throughout my time in 3rd year. So really quick, I'm Abraham. I'm a 4th year medical student at UT Health, San Antonio. From Houston, Texas, went to UT, the whole shebang. Check out my other videos if you want to kind of get to know about me. But this video is really all about 3rd year. A lot of people hit me asking Abe, how did you approach 3rd year? And 3rd year is different than 1st and 2nd year because there's really no guide. There's really no true, tried and true method. You know what I'm saying? There's UFAPs, you were a first day pathoma sketchy, going through your 1st year, 1st and 2nd year in med school. But in 3rd year, it's there's 20,000 resources for every single subject, every single rotation. I kind of just want to share how my 3rd year went, kind of what I would do differently, what worked for me, what didn't work for me, and then from there, hopefully whoever watches this video can get a better direction on how to approach their 3rd year, and set themselves up to do well in their clerkships as well as do well on step 2. Also, I did want to just appreciate and thank y'all for supporting me again throughout this whole time. I made my channel about a year ago. And I've gotten a lot of feedback, I've gotten just good positive energy. A lot of people tell me that, that my videos mean a lot to them, you know what I mean? So I appreciate just y'all supporting me throughout this journey. In my other videos, I had a little bit of hair, but, I hit the ball, it's just time my hairline was receding. So, this is me, bald and B, you feel me? So this is the new look. I hope y'all like it. Let me know what y'all think about it. Without further ado, so one thing I want to talk about is the order of what you should put your clerkships in. And really and truly, there's no right answer because all the rotations kind of build on themselves as far as shelf exams. The one piece of advice that I got, it depends on whether you know what you want to do, what specialty you want to go into or not. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of knew I want to do something surgical. So what I was told was try to get OB-GYN in before internal medicine, before surgery, because OB, exposes you to the OR, helps you get orientated as far as surgical approaches and things. IM is basically, the foundation of everything, and then surgery is basically IM with surgery. So if you do IM before surgery, surgery is a lot easier. And obviously you want to do well in the clerkship rotation that you're applying into. So that was the basis of my schedule. I just wanted OB before IM before surgery. However, you kind of want to be mindful of if you do a rotation in the spring during August, September, October, November, there may be rotating students from other schools at your school, 4th year rotating students or 4th year students on their sub-Is or active internships that may take away from your exposure. So let's say you want to do emergency medicine, your emergency medicine rotation in the fall may not be the best decision. You may want to kind of hold it off the early part of the spring, where you would have learned a lot. By the time you get to the EM rotation, you'll be able to shine and you get a good litter so before the application, you know what I'm saying? Another example, right? Let's say you want to do OB, you know what I'm saying? When on my OB rotation, we had rotating students from other schools. We had 4th year students doing their sub-Is. And a lot of times, with deliveries, they took precedence on who got to deliver the baby, who got to, go to the C-section. I didn't want to do OB, so I wasn't doing no tripping. But imagine if you did want to do OB, right? So you would be kind of bumped out of your position in the experience because of a seniority thing. So just keep that in mind. Let's say you want to do internal medicine, right? You want to make sure that you kind of do well on your internal medicine rotation. So you may want to do it in the second half of the year. And I've read places it's good to do peds before IM, because peds is basically internal medicine in kids. So you start to brush up on, all the different systems, GI, neuro, POM, and it really translates into adults with a different little bit of management, you know what I mean? So just whatever you kind of think you want to do, I would recommend kind of trying to do it in the second semester, because another thing is the way shelf exams are set up, the more rotations you do, the easier each subsequent shelf becomes, you know what I mean? So like when I took OB, I learned OB well, but I was like blindsided with medicine and surgery and neurology, like questions that, even though it didn't seem like it had to do with OB, they basically just, you can have a neurology concept in a pregnant woman and boom, they can put it on the OB shelf. Does that make sense? So whatever you want to do, I think is the best idea. So like try to do it in the beginning of your second semester, where you actually like have a foundation of, you know, medicine, foundation of how to be a clinical student, how to, you know, to relate to people, how to like, you know, presentations and everything. By that point gets a lot refined. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. All right, so one attending told me, and this is probably like a statement that kind of stuck with me in regards to how to be the best like student you can be. He called it 3 pillars of excellence. He said the 3 pillars of excellence are availability, affability, and ability. And that's basically gonna be the framework of my video. I'm gonna talk about those 3 pillars. And if you can get all 3 of those pillars in a decent amount, you'll do great in 3rd year. You can honors all of your rotations, you know what I mean? You'll get great letters of recommendations. If you can get 2 of those 3 pillars of excellence, then you can like, you know, you'll get through 3rd year without a problem. You may, you know, honors most, honors some, you know, whatever. But if you only have 1 or you can't get any of those in 3rd year, it may be a struggle for you. So the 3 pillars of excellence, availability, affability, and ability, right? So to start off with availability, just as it sounds, are you there on time, right? You can't be a good 3rd year student if you're late. You can't be a good 3rd year student if you don't know where to be, if you don't know how to get around. You know what I mean? You know, if I play sports, and my coach always told me, like, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, you're in trouble. You know what I mean? So just being on time is half the battle. You know what I'm saying? Like, you should aim to try to beat your residents, aim to try to beat your attending to clinic, to, you know, to the workroom, like every day. And they notice that kind of things, you know what I mean? And like just being on time, like you don't start off at a negative like impression, you know what I mean? First impression is everything, you see what I'm saying? And just being available, being there, you know, helps you a long way. To that point as well, like anytime you're in a new situation, the first thing you should do is introduce yourself, right? Imagine like, you know, you're the attending and you have like this workroom every day, right? You've been there for the last 10 years, and then somebody comes into your workroom that you don't know and is just sitting there in the corner like looking stupid. You're gonna be like, who is this guy? You know what I mean? Versus a person that, you know, you walk in like, oh, how you doing, Dr. Banco? I'm such and such. I'm the new 3rd year medical student. I'm gonna be with you for the next couple of weeks. You know, at that point, you're like, oh, okay, hi, welcome to my service. These are my expectations. You know what I mean? So just introducing yourself to the people in the room will just make a great first impression moving forward. When you go in the OR, introduce yourself to the residents, introduce yourself to the scrub techs. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I'm Abraham, I'm a 3rd year medical student. I'm going to try to scrub into this case, et cetera, et cetera. That's part of availability. Just, you know, letting people know you're there. And there's nothing much to say about availability. It's crazy, like that little subject takes so much, like has so much weight in the 3 pillars, right? But like you can not know anything, right? And if you just show up, like if you don't, well, I'll get to the other pillars, but if you just show up, that's half the battle. You know what I mean? Like not being late, not missing days, just be like, if everyone is like, you know, working 24 hours and you're there, then, you know, at least you'll get the baseline, like, okay, he showed up. So that's the first pillar, availability. The next pillar is affability. So what does affability mean? Affability means like your ability to work in a team. So the way our grades come from in my school, we have like 40% of your grade is like the shelf exam or like quizzes, like knowledge content. 40% of your grade usually comes from evaluations. You know what I mean? Was this like what the subjective portion of your grade, what your residents and attending say about you? And then the other 20% of your grade is just like little like busy work checkbox. Did you come to class? Did you sign in every such and such? Did you like log your cases? Did you know what I'm saying, return the books, things like that. So affability is really the point of the subjective, you know, like evaluation portion of your grades. So what I noticed about the affability, like the biggest thing you can do is be normal. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't try to do too much. Don't try to make people feel stupid. You know what I'm saying? Like, just be a pleasure to be around. Does that make sense? And it's just having manners, right? Like, everyone is a person at the end of the day. When you walk into a room, like, good morning. When you're leaving, like, y'all have a good weekend. You know, just things like that. You know what I'm saying? If you see somebody's like carrying 4 bags into the room, like, hey, can I help you? You know, just having manners, like that goes a long way. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, your grade is it's subjective. You know, like you can have a 20-minute interaction with somebody that literally holds your grade in their hand. So you want to be a good person. You feel me? Another thing about affability is like, you know, just trying to relate with patients. You see what I'm saying? Like when you walk into a room, like be polite. Good evening, Mrs. You know, such and such. You know, when you're leaving the patient's room, all right, y'all have a good day. You know what I mean? Like just being a good person will literally get you like a very long way. So another part of like affability is like just seeming interested, right? And for me, that's kind of like, that was harder for me to do because I'm like, hey man, if I don't care about it, I just don't care about it. But like, if you go into every rotation on some like, I want to take the most out of this rotation, and you show interest, like, oh, I want to see this lumbar puncture, even though you don't care. Oh, I want to see, you know what I'm saying, how they intubate this patient, or oh, I want to see, like, show me how you do a square knot, even though you already know how to square knot. Just being interested, you know what I mean, will give you the appearance of, you know, like caring, right? And the more that you show that you care, the better that affability portion of the pillars of excellence will be, and the better your subjective grade will be. Other things about like just being likable, you know what I mean? Like try to relate to people, try to relate to what other people relate to. You know, you have to kind of feed into egos in this process. Like it's a game. You know what I mean? I had one resident that she was so full of herself, right? So I played into it. You know what I mean? I was like, tell me about, you know, your experience in med school, and tell me about your trip to, you know, Molly, or tell me about, you know, your wonderful such and such. She just went, I didn't care, but it was like the more she talked about herself to me, around us, you know what I'm saying, I already knew like, okay, she likes us because we're giving her the platform to talk about herself. Play into people's egos, you know what I mean? Like I've had interactions with like certain attendings. I remember one attending on OB, we talked about like the Texans versus like the Cowboys, some football game for 20 minutes. He gave me straight 5s. I only saw him for 20 minutes, you know what I'm saying? Because we were able to relate to each other, you know what I'm saying? So just try to find a commonality with people, because at the end, remember, it's people that are grading you. And if you can just try to like, you know what I'm saying, like be good with other people, show that you care, then most of the time most of your subjective grades will be decent. You know what I'm saying? Like just showing up and having a smile can get you like the middle, like our score goes from 1 to 5, a 3 is the average, will get you at least 3s and 4s, you know, because it's like, oh, this person was a pleasure to be around. I liked him, you know, he smiled, he had good energy. I'm gonna give him some 4s and 3s. He didn't know all the questions I pimped him on, so I can't give him the 5, but you know, I gave him some 3s and 4s, you know, that's better than getting straight 3s, you know what I'm saying? So just being a normal person can really like take you a long way. Also, as far as affability, man, like you want to like be proactive, right? So like once you get on the service, once you get in a rotation, like figure out like the flow of things, figure out how things are done, and then try to anticipate the moves that your residents do on a daily basis. You see what I'm saying? Like if you're a resident, you know, every day they come in and they grab these sheets of paper and then they do this and that. Like if you can do those little things for them and make their lives a little bit easier, they'll really appreciate, you know, the fact that they don't have to spend that time doing this or that, and it really goes a long way. You see what I'm saying? So just like trying to like anticipate the next step, trying to be proactive, trying to like, hey, I know that we usually, you know, after we're done rounding, we usually consult this person, that person. Let me go ahead and call the consult for you if that's okay, you know, or let me call this family's, this patient's family, so I'll get the collateral and I'll write the note for you so you can go ahead and work on something else. You know what I'm saying? Just being proactive also helps you with that like affability, just the ability to relate to other people. Does that make sense? And honestly, personally, I think that for me is a double-edged sword, because like I'm a people person. I really feel like I can get anybody to like me. You see what I'm saying? But if I don't care if you like me, then I'm really checked out. And in 2 of the rotations that I didn't honors in, I think that was part of the reason why I didn't honors, because, and I'll kind of get to my mentality a little later when I kind of talk about like how I studied. But for me, I don't kiss ass. I'm not good at that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not finna like, hey, anybody want coffee? Like, no, I'm not doing all that, you know what I'm saying? So because I don't kiss ass, and if I feel like you're not giving me my due respect, then I'm just checked out, you know what I'm saying? But it ended up actually coming back to bite me in the foot, you know, in 2 of the 8 rotations that we had, you know, because I went 6 of 8 or 5 of 7. our EM rotation is pass fail. But you just kind of want to like remember, like at the end of the day, this is just a finite amount of time. And that's one thing that I didn't do the best at. I will just check out, you know, like if you don't like me, I don't care. You mean, because at the end of the day, I was about, and my biggest like focus was the last pillar of excellence, which is ability, which I get into now. So ability is basically, can you do your job? Are you knowledgeable in the subject that you're supposed to be knowledgeable about, you know? And that's really two parts, you know? That's like your quizzes and assessments that, you know, some schools have. Most of our rotations had quizzes. Most of our rotations had like some sort of midterm in a way. That's your shelf exam, and that's like, you know, just overall like knowledge on the clerkship, right? So like when you're getting pimped on rounds. And that's where I focus my ability on. My thing is like, because the subjectivity of third year, like you can literally like go beyond, above and beyond, and certain attendings or certain residents are going to give you what they give, right? So this resident or this attending is notoriously known for giving threes. You can literally, you know, write out his notes and feed his kid and save his dog, and you're getting threes. Or you can just show up, smile, yes sir, no sir, and get threes, right? Same goes with the fives. You can do nothing and get fives. You can do everything and get fives, sort of thing, right? So my thing was like, you know, I always went into rotations on some like, you know, I can't control what you give me, but I can control the work I put in academically to try to kill the shelf. And if I kill the shelf, it doesn't matter what you give me, I'm gonna honor the class. You see what I'm saying? And I wouldn't necessarily go in with that approach. Like I said, it ended up burning me twice. Actually, not even once for sure. But you know, if I had just been a little bit more interested, if I had just like, you know, focused on that affability portion of the pillars of excellence, just a little bit more, which I know I could have, which I know I have the ability to, you know what I'm saying, just showing a little bit more, you know what I'm saying? I would have actually been on that honors side. You know, I was like right on the edge on two of those classes. So don't be like me, you feel me? Like make sure you actually try to like focus on those three pillars: affability, availability, and ability. So the rest of this video is actually gonna be about the ability. How does one study in third year? How does one do good on the wards? How does one pass and kill the shelf exam? So I'm gonna talk about the basic foundational principle of the way I studied in third year, and then I'm gonna go on through each rotation and discuss which resource I use for what and when. So to begin, I don't know why there's this notion behind like the things you learn first and second year like automatically become different third year. Like third year is first and second year in real life. Does that make sense? And there's just like notion like you finish step one and it's like, oh, I don't ever need first aid again. I'm done with that part of life. Like no, that book, you're still gonna refer to it pretty commonly, you know what I'm saying? Because third year, it just adds on top of first and second year. And I kind of had this weird notion, I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna be learning a whole bunch of new things in third year, you know what I mean? But the reality of it is you're refreshing, you're relearning, you know, Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, you're relearning, you know what I'm saying, like pulmonary fibrosis, obstructive versus, you know, restrictive lung disease, and you're applying that in real clinical situations. In this situation, you will do this, but this would change that, and et cetera, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, if let's say you're a first year, second year watching this video, man, like the foundation that you build first and second year literally carries through third year, you know what I'm saying? And I say that now because the best way to study for third year is just to have a good foundation. You see what I'm saying? You can't be trying to teach yourself the pathophysiology behind, you know, I don't know, inflammatory bowel disease, like, or what's really going on in, you know, heart failure. Like if you don't understand the pathophysiology behind, if the pump doesn't work forward, it moves backwards, then all the management of heart failure won't be intuitive, won't make sense. You know what I'm saying? So really make sure that your foundation is solid. And if your foundation wasn't as solid as you thought it would be, like third year is the time to really make sure you understand those concepts. Because step two, even though it is like a next best step, even though it is like a, you know, a diagnostic-ish test, there's crazy pathophys on step two, you know what I'm saying? And there's a lot of like just straight like, did you understand this basic foundational concept? You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't disappear, it just adds on itself. So really just try to make sure that you understand those concepts. So back to the formula. If you basically apply this foundation every rotation, then you'll be able to have a chance at, you know, 75, 80 85th percentiling all your shells, getting honors, and really maximizing the ability portion of your 3 pillars of excellence. So the grandfather resource of third year is UWorld. Everything in UWorld will expose you to the must knows. You see what I'm saying? Like every question that you get is I have to know this code, right? And if you see UWorld like that, like if UWorld says, if it's in UWorld, then I really need to understand this concept. I need to understand it well, both for my shelf and for step 2. You see what I'm saying? The problem with like third year is like there's like 7 resources for every rotation. You know what I mean? There's like case files, pre-tests, lange, blueprints, first aid, amber. It's a lot, you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, you can only go with tried and true where the money is, or where the money has been for years and years. UWorld was actually originally created for step 2. So whatever UWorld has to say in that clerkship, like you just have to know code. So what I always recommend for every rotation, so I'm just gonna use pediatrics for this example. Okay, so you're starting pediatrics, you don't really know anything, that's cool, right? The goal is to make sure that you go through all of UWorld by the time your shelf is done, all the questions on pediatrics in UWorld. And then you always want to, like the last week, make sure you block off enough time to redo your wrongs. And with that process, what will happen is you'll realize you've already learned a lot of the things that are in like the Q bank, you know what I'm saying? But all the random, like what the hell is that? You'll expose yourself to it. You can then read up on it in the explanation, because remember, UWorld is a textbook. And then from there, by the time you see it again, it's not I've never seen this before. It's I remember learning this concept. Does that make sense? So I remember like in peds, there's a syndrome called like cyclic vomiting syndrome. So very like random. The babies like vomit for a certain period of time, then they stop vomiting, and then they vomit that same period of time, like repeatedly in a couple of months. Wild, right? The first time I saw it, I was like, there's no way this is the answer. That's, a distractor. I seen it, I learned it, and by the time I went through that question again before my shelf exam, I was comfortable, and I knew like, okay, if I see a concept like this on the shelf exam, I'll be able to answer it confidently. You see what I'm saying? So UWorld should be your primary like learning resource. You see what I'm saying? With UWorld, you will be exposed to the must-knows, right? So if you know everything that UWorld says you will know, you should at least 75, 80 percentile all your shells, you know what I mean? Now, in order to get those like last 20 percentile of points, you do have to supplement UWorld sometimes, right? So the next point on the way I studied, like on the pillars of excellence and the ability, I always like run through UWorld and then like use one more resource that's the tried and true resource for that rotation, and that's what I'm gonna talk about when I talk about each specific rotation. So for example, for pediatrics, pre-test for peds had like the best track record. So I did my UWorld, then when I finished UWorld for all of peds, then I ran through pre-test, right? And then once I ran through pre-test, I was like, okay, cool. Then I redid my wrongs from UWorld. Does that make sense? And at that point, I felt confident that I've seen everything. You feel me? But at the end of the day, man, the thing about third year is you don't have time to be inefficient. You see what I'm saying? So like the way you study in third year has to be efficiency and doing the questions. If there's a question on it, that means it can show up on your shelf, that's what you should know. The problem with like prioritizing like pre-tests or like all the other different resources above UWorld is that those resources will expose you to minutiae that are not important. Does that make sense? Whereas, let's say you go through UWorld, then you go through that additional resource, you will see the important things that UWorld already exposed you to somewhere in there. Then you really reinforce those topics, and then you'll at least I've seen random left field curveballs that they're using to like, just like make your testing experience more difficult. Does that make sense? So that's why UWorld always comes first, then an additional resource if you have time for that. So That's the first portion of the formula. The next portion is some sort of system where you keep track of the new random, diagnoses and the next step, the best step, why you do this versus that. You're keeping track of those concepts, you know what I'm saying? So for me, that was Anki. So with Anki, and I'm gonna get to Anki a little bit later, but with Anki, doing Anki every day, I basically like drilled those points every single day to the point where, if I learn something random, I learn something new. If I make cards on all of those topics, those concepts will, be stored in my brain, and I'll be able to move forward with them. You see what I'm saying? And really, by the time I got back to that missed question on UWorld, I was a lot more comfortable with that topic. You feel me? So it doesn't have to be Anki if you're not comfortable with Anki, or if you don't really just like the interface. Some of my classmates, what they do, they just, you have a journal, right? And you're writing down all the random nonsense that you're learning, you see what I'm saying? And then what you do with that journal is before your shelf, you're reading through those topics, you're reading through those concepts that you wrote down. One of my friends, what she does, she'll fold a piece of paper, have the question and the answer. She kind of self-quizzes herself to make sure that she knows, okay, what's the first best step for somebody that may have insulinoma? Oh, okay, boom, do this, What's the first best step for somebody that may have acromegaly? Okay, boom. Once you do that, what's the next step after that? Okay, boom. You know what I'm saying? But you want to have some sort of concept, because if you do UWorld, if you do the questions, but you don't retain the information that you learn moving forward, then it doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? You might as well just be reading a textbook, because like a real textbook, because you're not going to remember either of those anyhow. You're going to get to the shelf and struggle. So you really want to make sure that you have some sort of system where you're keeping track of the knowledge that you're learning and moving forward with it. My personal opinion, I think Anki is just the most efficient learning resource to use when it just comes to remembering things, and I'll get to that in a little bit. The last point in the formula is the NBMEs, obviously. Just like step one, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to do all the NBMEs before your shelf exam. I really just don't understand how people go into a NBME without seeing the other practice NBMEs, you know what I'm saying? It's gonna just give you the best way to, it's gonna give you the style of how they come with the questions, you know what I'm saying? Real quick, just let me share with y'all what our attending told us about shelf exams. Shelf exams are literally bad tests, you know what I mean? So the questions that they put on shelf exams are either old USMLE Step 2 questions that have kind of been overused to the point where, because a question can only be asked a finite amount of times, that they take it out of the Step 2 bank and put it in the shelf exam. Or they're questions that were not good enough to make it to Step 2, you know what I'm saying? So when a question is written, let's say I write a question, and then it passes the next, like a verification step and the next verification step. And then at some point it's like, this actually is a kind of convoluted, like not a clear, not a good question. Those are the questions that end up on your shelf exams, you know what I'm saying? So shelf exams are difficult, and like the questions are usually a combination of old questions that have been retired and bad questions, you know what I'm saying? So you have to kind of familiarize yourself with the type of way they ask these bad questions, and the best way to do that is by doing the NBMEs, you feel me? So I always like to do all the NBMEs the last week, because at that point I've seen most of the material, I've learned what I'm supposed to have learned, and then I'll do the practice exams, and I have that style going into the shelf. You also will be exposed to left field nonsense on your shelf exams. I remember on my neurology shelf exam, I learned about acute cerebellar ataxia. You know what I'm saying? Basically, a kid gets varicella, now he can't walk, acute varicella ataxia, which showed up on my Step 2 exam. I was like, let's eat up, you feel me? But I was just like, if I hadn't done the NBMEs, I wouldn't have seen that, you know what I'm saying? So the point is like, just make it a part of who you are to make sure you do the NBMEs before the exam, you feel me? And if you run through UWorld, plus or minus an additional resource of your choice, if you have time, and then make sure you go through your wrongs again, you're being consistent with the process of seeing the things that you've learned, or at least make sure that you re-see the things that you learned, and then you finish off with the NBMEs. Like, the shelf exams usually work out, usually are okay, you feel me? So I'm gonna get into the what resources I use for each rotation. So and this is off memory, so in order, started off with psychiatry. I'm not gonna repeat the formula. I'm not gonna repeat. I did UWorld, I did Anki, and I did this NBME practice shelf exams, because that's the formula. That's being done across all of my rotations. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna just kind of go into what what other resource I used, whether I liked it or not, and what I would use differently, what I would have done differently. So real quick before I do that, I do want to talk about one thing, which is Online MedEd. Online MedEd is a very solid resource. They basically show you the big picture behind all the things you need to know. You see what I'm saying? And I use Online MedEd for in Psych just because I really don't have a guideline. I use Online MedEd pretty extensively as well in Pediatrics. But I didn't use Online MedEd in like IM or surgery just because the videos are there's a lot of videos. And me personally, I'm an active learner. You know what I mean? I can't sit down and like if I have 20 minutes, like I want to do as many questions as I can. It's just how I learn best. I think Online MedEd is definitely worth it. You know what I mean? So if part of your formula is to run through Online MedEd the first week of rotation, I think that's a good idea. I just didn't have the time or want to dedicate the time to that. You know what I'm saying? But I know, like, I will advocate to say it's a great resource. You see what I'm saying? So if you like Online MedEd or you're curious about Online MedEd, I think it's definitely a solid resource for you to just see the big picture of everything you need to know. For me, it's just a little passive, but I will say Online MedEd will expose you to those left field random nonsenses as well. So there is value in it, but I just can't like watch 9 videos in a row, because then by the first video, if I'm not being active in my learning, I'm gonna forget it. And I remember when I started Psych, when I started my first rotation, I tried to take notes on all the Online MedEd videos, and it was just taking too long. So there was no way I was gonna do that, you know what I'm saying, in IM when there's like 40 videos, or in surgery when there's like 30, 40 videos, you know what I'm saying? But it is a solid resource. I just personally didn't use it. So to begin, my first rotation was psychiatry. In addition to the formula, I used First Aid for Psych. It was a quick little read, and that's the only book I read in 3rd year. Like, I'm not reading, it's just too passive of a learning like style, too passive of a learning tool. If I read chapter 1, 2, and 3, by the time I get to 4, I forgot 1. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not forcing myself to learn and keep as I go. But because the First Aid for Psych is a small read, I read it. It was good. I recommend it. It's not a bad read at all. And I also did some Lange Psych Q&A questions just to see more questions, because I already finished UWorld. And then the Psych shelf went well. I honored that. So my next rotation was OB. So also, real quick before I go back to OB, Psych is basically the stuff you learn in psychiatry from 1st year, with the addition like medical management, like medication arrangements. Like, it's not that much more things. So like starting my year in Psych was a nice transition, but then OB was actually, I would say, would have been the first real clerkship, because OB is a whole different learning, like it's a whole different learning curve. You see what I'm saying? So in OB, in addition to the formula, I did the ACOG or APGO question bank. Our school had us a prescription, and I ran through all of that. I ran through UWorld, and I ran through case files. Now the OB shelf was kind of tough for me. Like I didn't do bad. Like I got an 80, you know what I'm saying? But I was like I didn't honor, I got like an 89, you feel me? My evals were whatever, and my shelf wasn't like high enough to get the A. But looking back at it, if I would have done something differently, I know I'm not stressing on a grade, because I worked my butt off, you know what I mean? I did UWorld, APGO, and case file, so it's like, I went into the shelf thinking like I haven't done everything I could, but I kind of got like blindsided by some of the surgery and the medicine, like some stuff that I just hadn't really learned, or stuff that I really hadn't really seen, being that it was my 2nd rotation. If I had done it again, I wouldn't have done case files. My personal opinion on case files is like, it doesn't expose you to the nitty gritty enough. It's kind of surface level, you know what I'm saying? The things you learn in case file, you've already seen in your world, you know what I mean? Whereas pre-test gets to the nitty gritty, kind of way too nitty gritty. That's kind of annoying, you know what I mean? But had I had done pre-test instead of case files, I think I would have been exposed to more of those medicine and surgery concepts that I hadn't seen, and I probably would have done better on the shelf. Regardless, I did as much as I could do, you know what I'm saying? Like, nobody's perfect, you feel me? So, but that's what I did for OB. And OB is actually when I realized that I don't like reading. Like, I tried to read blueprints, and it was too stupid. Like, it took me like 3 days to read 2 chapters. I'm a slow reader, so I was like, yeah, that's not gonna work. The next rotation I had was family medicine. So there's no family medicine. Quite like block in UWorld. family medicine concepts are kind of sprinkled into internal medicine. So what I did, our school gives us the ABFM practice test for the last 6 years, about 200 questions each. And I just did a practice test a week, 200 questions a week like that, making Anki cards on every question I missed, and make sure I knew my guidelines and like indications for lipids and all that kind of crap. And ended up honoring that rotation. It ended up going well. If you have a family medicine rotation, I would recommend either getting like pre-test. It will expose you to everything you need to know. Or like there's the AAFP, American Academy of Family Physicians. They have a Q bank. Or like try to get the American ABFM, American Board of Family Medicine. That's the accrediting agency that actually certifies family medicine residents into full-fledged physicians. The concept is the same. You find some questions, you do all the questions, you learn from those questions, you make cards and or make notes on those questions, and then obviously the MBMEs. So that was the family medicine. For pediatrics, I used, in addition to the formula, I did pre-test. So pre-test for peds, it like is a tried and true. Everybody swears by pre-test for peds. You see what I'm saying? So I did UWorld, ran through pre-test, redid my wrongs, went through the MBMEs, in addition to Anki every day. And peds is supposedly a harder shelf, and it was super smooth for me. Ended up honoring that rotation. For internal medicine is actually the simplest rotation to study for, because the formula like is the way to study. You know what I'm saying? There's like 1,500 URL IM questions. The goal is to get through all 1,500 in your time in the rotation, redo your wrongs, Anki every day, all the MBMEs. The IM shelf was a breeze. You know what I'm saying? I didn't do any additional resources because in order to get through your questions, you're basically doing 40 questions, a block a day, which, you know what I'm saying, when you're getting out the hospital at 4, to do a block of questions will take you to 5 to review for 2.5 hours. It can get pretty taxing, but you know what I'm saying, like you have to do a little every day. And I should have mentioned that way in the beginning. But in order to do well in the ability portion of the 3 pillars of excellence, you have to work every day. You know what I'm saying? Like third year is a grind. You know what I'm saying? It's just a grind. You know what I'm saying? So in order to like be successful, you have to put in the work. Surgery. So I had surgery after IM, and I had to really learn most of those like medicine-ish concepts in surgery. Surgery is really just IM versus not operating. If you operate, what operation do you do? They're not asking you like, like what should you avoid and this and that. Like that's when you're in residency. So for me, because I already did all of medicine, I didn't the formula. And my additional resource for surgery was AMBOSS. I ran through all the AMBOSS questions, and then the MBMEs. Surgery, actually, I didn't honor that rotation, and I think that's the rotation where my affability portion of the 3 pillars of excellence actually came back to hurt me. I also missed the quiz, which didn't help at all. If I had done that quiz, I would have been on the right side of things. But that shelf, that particular shelf, I didn't do what I know I'm capable of doing. You know what I'm saying? Probably one of my lower shelves, and it didn't feel hard. I just, in the middle of the test, I just found myself not focused. You know what I'm saying? And it's life. Nobody's perfect. You feel me? So don't feel like, you know what I'm saying? Like if you don't honors everything, then you're, it's the end of the world. Like I didn't honor surgery, and I want to go into surgery, and I'm sure I'm gonna be fine. You feel me? But at the end of the day, I have peace in, I know I worked every single day. You know what I mean? I didn't take days off. You feel me? Well, I did take a couple weeks off, like the first week of surgery because of IM. I was tired, but I knew I did as much as I could do. You know what I mean? I did over 1,000 questions for surgery, and the shelf did not feel hard. I just feel like I made stupid mistakes, just not being focused. You feel me? But that's why I said you really want to make sure that you stand true to those 3 pillars the whole year. Because had I shown a little bit more interest, had I been a better student, even though the shelf didn't save me, my evals would have saved me. You see what I'm saying? So that's surgery. For emergency medicine, so after I finished surgery, I basically had done all of UWorld, because there's only 5 sections in UWorld for step 2: Psych, Peds, OB, IM, and surgery. So at that point, I just like reset UWorld, and that's when I started studying for step 2. So in emergency medicine, I didn't use any resources. I was just studying for step 2 in emergency medicine. However, had I had emergency medicine first, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So I would have used either pretest for emergency medicine or Roche review for emergency medicine. I didn't use either of those because our emergency medicine rotation is pass-fail. I wasn't gonna fail it, you feel me? I just took surgery. I just took IM surgery, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's nothing on that shelf exam that would have kept me from passing. So, but it's crazy because that was actually the highest percentile shelf I had. I think I got 98 percentile that shelf. But I just really reset UWorld and called it a day. And then our last rotation was neurology. I didn't study for that either. My theory was the neurology that I hit as I'm going through UWorld again will be the neurology I take into the exam. I ended up honoring that, but had I had neurology earlier, I would have just did the neurology. There's a neurology section in the IM section of UWorld, and or pretest for neurology, which a lot of people speak highly of. So wrap this video up. If you're still watching, I appreciate your attention span, but the intensity in which you go in 3rd year determines how smooth your step 2 goes. And I'll talk about step 2 in a different video, my step 2 experience. I took it last week, so I don't know what I got, but it didn't feel bad, so we'll see. However, like, if you study your butt off for every single rotation, you're learning the must-knows about Peds, the must-knows about OB, the must-knows about IM, the must-knows about surgery. By the time you get to step 2, you have been practicing for step 2 for a year. Does that make sense? And that's why I kind of think that step 2 scores are higher than step 1, because in step 2, you've literally been practicing for a year. So really, my best advice, if you need motivation onto why to care in 3rd year, other than your intrinsic pride that I know you have in yourself, because if you didn't have it, you wouldn't be watching this video. But just know the harder you go for each clerkship, will make those concepts make more sense by the time you take step 2. And if you go hard all year, your step 2 will go smooth. Anywho, that's all I have for this video. I appreciate y'all for making this to the end. I know I've been MIA, but I'm back at it, you know what I'm saying? If you have any questions, concerns, anything you want me to clarify, leave a comment below. Share this with your classmates. I appreciate the love, you know what it is. Stay humble, stay hungry. Let's get it.